What's up, YouTube? Back at you again. Um, Today, I wanted to talk about something I heard on a podcast. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's Grits and Egg podcast. I haven't watched a lot of them, but just looking at some reactions. But basically, it was just talking about black men should be held accountable for the bad behavior of other black men. And I just wanted to get into that and kind of discuss that, right? So, before we get started, if you guys could, hit the like button, subscribe, a comment, it really would help me out, help me grow the channel, help me, work with the algorithm. I really appreciate it. But anyway, to jump off on these things, um, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't think black men should be held accountable for the bad actions of other black men. And of course, that comes with a caveat because there's conditions and caveats that come along with that, right? So, what I mean by that is the black man has been removed from the top of the black culture as far as we are in a matriarchal black culture. What I mean by that is that the women, and this is coming from me, a lot of other men I have. While we may have had male figures in our lives, the women normally have the authority in our community, right? Meaning that a majority of men that you see now and that you've seen for the last however many years, decades, really, were raised in single mother households, and they were raised in single mother communities. So a lot of the emotional behavior that you see from a lot of young black men is because there is no patriarch in the family to hold those men accountable, right? Because that's what, essentially what he's asked us to do is be accountable for men we had no hand in raising and no authority over, because of how toxic they are to women, when in reality women had the authority and accountability over those men, and those men turned out the way they are. A lot of times when young men are removed from the authority of a man, at for whatever reason, whether the dad is just a deadbeat, or just not around, because we tend to foster this single mother epidemic here in the black community. And I think a lot of that is the choices that some women make. They deal with men that have multiple children by multiple women, and I think a lot of that is, even if the man is a good man, as far as his morality outside of creating broken homes. He, like, what I mean by that, he may not be constantly in jail or anything like that. He just maybe have some proclivity to make broken homes, which that's a moral case in itself. Let's say he's a decent father when he's available. You can't be around those children 100% of the time. It's impossible. You can't be in two places at once. So that means if he's in his home, the other children are going to sleep and waking up without their father in the house, right? So that means that whoever the mother is the one who has the authority over the child. And I'm 41, so I remember growing up and there were single mother households. You know what I mean? I don't know how far it goes back. I mean, because there were obviously there were some families that did have mother and father, and for the most part, those kids and those guys turned out okay. For the most part, not all, and nothing's 100%. And a lot of the problems came from single mother households. They just didn't have a father for discipline, right? And they were a little bit more emotional, because they weren't ever taught how to direct those emotions. And to address the commentator about holding other black men accountable, in a perfect world, yeah, right. So his point was like, okay, a lot of men, only he was saying only some men can accept rejection. The majority of men don't. And I think that that premise in itself is false, because what happens is a majority of encounters that women have with men that are like that. Let's say you always hear the story. 'Cause I'm not dismissing that don't happen, but because you always hear the stories. A guy will approach a woman and she turns him down, or she could say, "I have a boyfriend," whatever the case is. When she starts rejecting, you can get aggressive, right? Now, let's say this woman goes out um, every weekend, for example, right? She's accounting that behavior at least once every night that she goes out. Let's say that's what happens. Now she said, "All men are like this." Da, da, da. What about the other 100 men that you passed that night that didn't say anything? Because they were invisible, they didn't even register that those men are, not part of the problem, right? Because they didn't approach you. They didn't care about approaching you. You're basing your interaction with this one guy, because it happens to you like every time you go out, or majority of times you go out. You're like, well, that must be the majority of guys because it's always happening to me. The truth of the matter is, it's not the majority of guys, because the majority of guys are invisible to women. And what women are experiencing, whether they say, I hate men, or a lot of times when women talk about, how men treat them, they're talking about the small minority of men that they've dealt with, right? Because there's no woman, it's like there's no man that's dealt with the majority of women. There's no woman that's dealt with the majority of men. What you're seeing is your small sample size expounded upon every man, right? Um, like, for example, a lot of women who deal with guys, and they be like, well, all these guys they always got these hoes, they got these women, da 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 da. You can't trust a guy. Majority of men have no relationship with women, so you can tell that women haven't had the interaction with men like they claim, because the men that are having multiple women are such a rare breed in society that you're talking about less than 10% of men. What happens is, it's in the phrase, right? These men deal with multiple women, so multiple women have experienced men who have that, right? So it's expounded upon their interaction and their perception. Because let's say, for example, I got 5 women, right? So women are like, oh, you always got you got all these other women. Those women say the same thing. So each of those 5 women, right, have the same experience as every other one of those 5 women, and then they expound that, because the next guy that they're attracted to, and this is why what I mean by that. I had to tell somebody the other day, I said the qualities that make men attractive to women make them attractive to more than just one woman. If you find him attractive, right? You find him sexy, you find him, intoxicating, whatever the attributes that you think are important. Other women think that's important too. Just like, a guy a guy may see a woman and she has, the physical attributes that he's attracted to. Other men are attracted to the same attributes. So we as men expect men to be attracted to my woman because, she has attributes that most men like, right? And number two, she's a woman. So even if she doesn't have all the same attributes that she's not the baddest in the book, she's a woman. Some man is attracted to her, right? And that's the flip side for men. Men don't have that. Just by being a man doesn't mean a woman's attracted to you. But women believe, because they dealt with men who are able to get multiple women because of the things that they worked on themselves, or just by pure physicality or confidence, they were able to bag multiple women. Believe all men are like that. And I had to tell my wife that your experience is colored by the men you date, and with the majority of guys have very few interactions with women. But those women are not counting those men in the equation when they say all men are bad, because those men don't exist to women. Right? You're not thinking. When a woman says these men ain't stuff, they think about Bob they work with every day. That's square, wears the same couple shirts. Every day he eats lunch by himself. They ain't talking about Bob. Bob doesn't exist. They don't even think about Bob when they make that association, right? They're thinking about Chad and Tyrone. Chad is, the version for pale people, and Tyrone is our version, right? And you think about Tyrone that they let borrow the car, didn't put no gas in it, probably was at another chick house. They think about Tyrone. Well, Tyrone is a very small percentage of the community, but he's expounded upon the rest of the community, and we're supposed to take accountability for Tyrone when Tyrone's behavior has been encouraged, right? Because he's able to be successful with that type of behavior. Just think about why that people respond negatively when they're rejected. Their ego's involved, right? So a lot of these men that these women are talking about, they have not had the opportunity to, or the privilege to be raised by a man and control their emotions, right? So when you remove men from the home, that's what you're removing, control the emotions, right? Because women are emotion based first, and men are logic based first, I believe. Man, what I mean by that, because let's say, for example, I'm a father, and then I'm raising a son, and he gets out of line, because somebody made him feel some type of way. I can have that conversation with him and be like, you can't react like that, because you have an emotion, and we can set hard boundaries, because when a son acts out with a father in the house, he meets hard boundaries, he understands the consequences of reacting a certain way. So I can be accountable for my son, but I can't be accountable for some guy. I can't be accountable for him. I can't be accountable for him because in order for me to be accountable for that man, I have to be accountable for the conditions that created that man, right? And what are those conditions? Shorty walks by, and she has very little clothes on, and women will say, "Well, I should be able to wear what I want." It's not a perfect world. You can't wear what you want, and if I don't have the authority to say, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't be out late wearing that," then and you can't expect me to have any accountability for the men. You don't get to do what you want and then demand that other people change their behavior for you, right? Um, well, it's not me giving an excuse for the men. It's the reality of the situation. You know what I mean? And some men are disrespectful. Some. It's like if I go downtown, right, and I'm walking with a lady. I remember I was dating this girl one time, and I was walking downtown, and I've seen this happen to multiple dudes when they walk downtown. Um, I may pass 100 to 200 guys, and they don't say anything. But guess who I remember? I remember that one guy who said something to my lady, and I will stand on business when I say, man, can't take your lady out downtown. Them jokers don't know how to act. They be doing this, especially if she dressed up. When really it was just 1 out of 100. So that's 1%. But he was allowed 1%. The squeaky wheel gets the attention, and that's what I think. What we're really seeing here. The squeaky wheel gets the attention because you can't convince me that men are so bad that the majority of men are so bad that the women experience. Because if the majority of men were as bad as women believe they were, y'all wouldn't be able to exist. If 80% of men were as bad as women believe they are, right? Y'all couldn't walk out. Y'all could not be in public if 80% of men were that bad. But like I said, it's the 10 to 20% of men that are expounded upon the other 80%. And now you believe the majority of men bad because those are the reactions you remember. That is the perception of men that you have because how loud those reactions are in your mind. And that's the reaction you take home. I mean, I can remember vividly the times when, a guy said something out of place to my woman. And I had to check him out out in public downtown. And it was one of us. It was always one of us, right? But I've also passed another 20 or 30 of us who didn't say anything, didn't say a word. So and I'm saying 20 or 30, but I passed like at least 100 men total of all races, colors, and creeds. But another at least 20 or 30 of me, the men that look just like me, come from the background I came with, they didn't say anything. But that one of us was who stood out. That's who made me mad all night long. Because of that one interaction. And I imagine women are feel the same. Because it's a little bit different for them. Because some of these dudes are, when they say it, are crazy. Oh, they want to call you out your name and do all that. And of course, that's an event that lasts with you because you're like, I just wanted to enjoy myself tonight, but me not being interested in God, got a little scary for a second. But I can't be accountable for him because I'm like, why you out by yourself? Why you out? I can't have any authority over what you do day to day. Like, yeah, you might be walking in a grocery store, the guy might do that, but it's more unlikely that you go there, or I'm gonna tell you to go somewhere else. Like, look, every time you go there, there's some sketchy dudes outside. Why are you going there? Go to such and such where there's no sketchy dudes. Or if you going out every weekend and why you going out every weekend? Why you out past a certain time of night? That's when the scallywags is out anyway. Why are you dressing provocatively? Why are you giving him something to compliment on? But I don't have that authority. But anyway, just my thoughts on the situation. I think a lot of people want men to take accountability, but they don't want to take accountability for themselves. And responsibility without authority, as I heard someone say, that's slavery. And I can't be responsible for people that I have no authority over. I can't be accountable for people that I have no authority over, and that goes for men and women. I can only be accountable for the people that are under my covering and under my program. I mean, it's just my thoughts for today. You guys tell me what you think. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and comment. Really help me grow the channel. I appreciate it.